All right, hard to believe it's already October 1st. I'm meteorologist Brian McClure watching the weather for you. Wanted to give you a quick tropical update on this Tuesday morning. Yesterday we were talking about how there could be some new formation coming out of the Western Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. This kind of will give you a broader idea or a better idea of the broad picture in Central America and what's going on right now. Sometimes the videos do it better justice than just pictures. So I wanted to give you an idea of what we're looking at. The intertropical convergence zone, or basically the monsoonal trough, is running right through here. Very normal area for there to be multiple tropical waves, low pressure areas, that kind of stuff right along that area. The problem with this late season so far is instead of tropical lows developing, let's say on the Pacific side, and then just working their way westward, which is very, very common. Instead, what we're noticing is there are lots of low pressure areas hugging the Pacific coast, and a lot of this moisture is actually feeding back into Central America, and in some cases, actually into the Caribbean. So, for example, what's happening right now is you do have a bunch of moisture right in this area with an area of low pressure on the Pacific side, and it's trying to feed up through the Chevella Pass and right into the Bay of Campeche. You have a tropical wave located right here, passing the Yucatan Peninsula, and you have a broad, weak, low-pressure area, again, along the monsoonal trough down here near Costa Rica and Panama. Not that big a deal in and itself, but the problem is there is this massive upper low that is currently moving westward through this area. Why does that matter? It matters because as that upper low, which by the way, you can see it if you look real carefully, you can see it right in there. You can actually see the circulation right in there. Now that's not a surface low, so that has nothing to do with tropical on the ground, but it's in the upper part of the atmosphere. This matters because as it moves westward, what it's going to do is it's going to tug on this low and it's going to pull it northward, okay? So let me remove that. And again, look at the rotation that you see west of Jamaica, right near the Cayman Islands. See that circulation. That's not on the surface. That's an upper low about 30,000 feet high in the sky. So again, that will help to pull this moisture northward like that. Okay, so all that being said, now you have a good idea of what's going on, and now you see why a graphic like this is made, because there's a possibility that as this broad area of low moves northward into the Gulf, this is where you could get formation. It's not the same setup, though, as Helene, so I don't want people to kind of freak out and go, oh my gosh, we're going to have another hurricane. Maybe not. It's something that we're obviously watching for, but I don't know. All the indices are actually kind of showing that this should be pretty weak. So let me first go over, this is kind of an interesting thing that I love to watch as a meteorologist. This is basically like a moisture tracker. Okay, so what you're looking at is here you can see Central America right through here. And what I want you to notice is instead of this moisture, again, moving westward in the Pacific, look how it's actually feeding eastward into Central America. Then I want you to watch this area and watch how everything's moving in that direction. Okay, so let me move that, and now you can watch it. We'll just watch it for a few loops here together. Watch how everything south of Central America and Pacific is feeding eastward. Everything on the east side of Central America and the Caribbean is feeding westward. So what you're seeing here is the Central American gyre in full effect, okay? You not only have broad area of low pressure, you have lifting motion in this area, you have feeding tropical waves and tropical lows, you have a tropical wave passing by, you have an upper low passing by. There's a lot going on down there. And we've seen this in some years. It doesn't always set up in the same spot, but it's basically what we call in the meteorology world conducive areas for development over and over and over. In other words, some years you just get repeated development in the same corridor. Well, this is going to be one of those years where it's basically the Western Caribbean, Central America. Now, that doesn't mean it'll always be towards Florida, but it could be on the Central American side of the Pacific. It could be on the eastern side of the Central America into the Caribbean. But my point is, it's all happening down there, and you can definitely tell it is. So, let's get into the meat of what is happening right now. Okay, here's the upper low. There you can see it right there. All right, so what I've done is I've pulled up upper level wind shear patterns to show you a good idea of what we're looking at in this area. So there's the upper low, and the little area of tropical low is right down in here. All right, so let me remove that, and let's go forward in time and watch how the upper low moves west towards the Yucatan Peninsula. Here, I'll go back and forth, and you can see that westward movement. See it right there? As it does that, the little surface tropical low seems to get pulled behind it on the backside. See it right in there? So here's your big upper low moving west, and here's the little tiny tropical low coming up on the backside. Okay? So let me move forward a little bit further. And what ends up happening is there, now all the way into Friday, is that little tropical low on the backside. And it's finally made it into the Gulf. So that would be this Friday. Now, here's the good and bad news. The bad news is, yes, we have to still talk about the tropics in October. That's just life living in October. Or living in Florida, in October. Here's the positive news. The positive news is once that tropical low gets into the Gulf, the conditions really aren't what I'd call perfect like they were for Helene. Remember, during the entire lifespan of Helene, I kept saying, hey, there's really no wind shear. It's in a perfect environment. That's not really the case into the weekend. This is strong wind shear that is currently running through that area. You see it right through there? Okay. So you've got strong wind shear in that area. And you also have some wind shear down here still from an upper low. You have wind shear in here. So in other words, there's a lot going on down in that area. And that's definitely helping, okay? That's helping to keep the tropics from somewhat bombing out. In other words, again, not the same conditions as Helene. So if we go all the way into early next week, what I want you to notice is the models are basically hinting at and trying to say, hey, it does look like some type of low pressure areas. You know, it could be one big broad area of low pressure area. It could be two little small low pressure areas. But what I want you to notice is while the guidance is hinting at that, they're also saying, wow, look at that strong wind shear across the southeastern U.S. So if something were to try and develop and move north, it would be shredded. If something were to develop and try and move east, it would basically quickly jet right out into the Atlantic, maybe through southern Florida. My point to all this is, as of right now, what appears to be happening is the guidance is kind of seeing what we're seeing, which is you've got tons of moisture. You've got a tropical low here. You've got a tropical wave right in here that's moving west. You've got tropical moisture down here in the Pacific. And it is all going to try and converge in this area of the Gulf. But when it converges, the moisture will not have a great environment to consolidate around one centralized low and get really strong. So here comes that tropical low coming up out of the Caribbean. You can see it here. I'll go back and forth. See it coming up out from Panama. See it right there. Passes the Cayman Islands. Here I'll keep moving forward. Here it comes. And there it is. By Friday night going into Saturday, there it is right there. See it located in the eastern Gulf now. But notice what else is happening. Right down here in the southwestern Gulf, Bay of Campeche, you've got all that moisture coming from the Pacific through the Chavela Pass. And you also have the old tropical waves sitting down there. So in other words, you have two pieces of energy sitting in the same body of water in the Gulf of Mexico. Let's move this forward. Sometimes they actually fight against each other, and that's kind of happening in this case. So you move it forward all the way to Sunday, and sure enough, you have this piece of energy still here in the eastern Gulf. You have another piece down here in the southwestern Gulf. Then let me move it forward all the way into Monday. And look at how entangled they are, but yet they seem to almost spin around each other. And it does, on this particular model, this is the GFS, it does just happen to try to spin it up right at the last minute, but then it just kind of flings it eastward and sprawls it out into the Atlantic. You see that? How it just kind of goes, okay, I felt the wind shear, which the wind shear is running right through here. So it kind of tries to spin it up right in here, and then it just kind of goes whoop, whoop, out there and into the Atlantic. So my whole point to this is, in reality, what's probably going to happen and in reality what the model is trying to say to us and trying to see. And that's the thing as a meteorologist. We can't just take one run of any model. That's why we take ensembles and spaghetti plots and consensus, because good meteorologists will look at the tendencies and the trends. Well, the tendency right now is for everything to yell at us and basically say, hey, yes, there's tropical moisture, and yes, we could have a tropical system, but right now, all the ensembles have come down to less than 20% development. So a few days ago, it was at 40%. Yesterday, I told you it was at about 30%. Today, they're running between 13 and 19%. So not only are the trends coming down, but they're also showing that if something develops, it would probably be weak. So you would probably get development somewhere in here in the Gulf. And yes, a low could form, but it would probably be weak, and then it would just kick eastward. Or here's another scenario. It could just sit in the Gulf for a week. So let me play this forward for you. And it just looks like a big blob mess, right? It just looks like a bunch of green everywhere. And you can start to kind of see right in there. Okay, there does appear to be two areas of moisture. One probably right there, and one right there. Exactly what I was referring to just a few minutes ago. Okay, and that's on Sunday. Still doesn't look like anything's really that organized, though. It just looks like two big blobs of moisture. Now watch what ends up happening. And again, this is just one model run, so don't take this for gospel, but this is just kind of an idea of, okay, general idea of what might happen. All of a sudden, you kind of see the model going, oh, okay, I kind of get an idea. Maybe they just kind of coalesce around one big blob, and it just kind of spins out here. Definitely a possibility. So it could be one of those situations where you just have tons of clouds around this weekend, scattered showers and storms, but nothing organized. And then look, it just sits out there in the Gulf. There it is. It tries to develop. That would be a weak tropical depression or tropical storm right there. And then it says, oh, I think I'm going to go north. Nope. I'm just going to sit there because wind shear would knock it apart if it tried to go north. So then we're all the way into next Wednesday, next Thursday now. I mean, this is a long time. This is more than a week away. And look, it's still just kind of meandering around in the Gulf. So that kind of gives you a good idea what we're talking about how, the good news is it looks like anything that gets into the Gulf, the signs are showing that it would be weaker than what they were showing just a few days ago. A lot of them aren't even developing it. And the other thing, too, is I just don't see anything that's like Helene as of right now. If you're going to get something that's like Helene, you have to get one of two scenarios. You either have to get a tropical storm that develops down here in the Western Caribbean and moves north, or you have to get something in the Gulf that firmly develops and then moves northeastward. Those are your two scenarios for most scary situations of storm surge and strong winds, and neither one of those is really showing up right now. All right, I'll cut this off because we've already gone 13 minutes, so again, Tuesday, October 1st, I'm meteorologist Brian McClure. I'll have more updates as I get more data in here over the next couple of days.